Hi, my name is Paul Ashton. I am a volunteer with the Obama campaign. I'm also a member of the Arlington County Democratic Party. I'm a precinct captain for one precinct and an area chair for 10 precincts along the metro corridor, the corridor of our underground line. So it's a very heavily populated area, a lot of high-rises, although some areas of single-family houses as well. Arlington is a very strongly Democratic jurisdiction. We've probably voted 67% Democratic, and the turnout's been about 72% for general elections, for presidential elections. This year we're trying to increase that significantly, at least up to 80% turnout, and we'd like to get, of that turnout, 80% Democratic. That may be a stretch goal, but we're really trying hard to do it. In 2004, we lost the state of Virginia by 2,500 votes. That was 8% of the electorate at that time. We really think that this year we are in the front lines. It's a swing state possibility, in part because we've already registered a new 350,000 voters, and we also anticipate that turnout will be much higher this year. So there's a very good chance that we can take Virginia home and bring the 13 electoral votes that it represents into the Democratic column for the first time since 1964. The critical areas are getting high turnout in Democratic areas like Arlington, and then getting more and more swing voters and independent voters outside of the area, outside of the heavily Democratic areas, to vote for Obama. With Jim Webb as the senator, who is from southwestern Virginia, with Mark Warner, the very popular ex-governor running for Senate on the Democratic ticket, and one of the last Republican governors of Virginia endorsing Obama, one of the best, well-respected ones, we have every chance, we have every hope that we are going to be able to win in Virginia this year.
What do you see is the primary concerns of swing voters who haven't particularly decided between Obama or McCain yet?
What I believe they are articulating is a concern about experience. That seems to be the line that they sort of hold on to. But you hear much less of that after the debate experiences. I think that Obama's very presidential demeanor during the debates went a long way to reassuring people who felt that they could vote for him, to say that indeed it was safe to vote for him. And I think he looked presidential, he acted presidential, and of course during the recent crisis he behaved in a calm and reasoned and non-erratic manner, which I think worked very well for him.
And what do you see as the implications? A lot of people talk about this as the election of the last 40 years, the biggest one, has the biggest implications. And what do you see is at stake for the American reputation abroad, or about America's ability to handle its domestic issues at home?
I think it's a very important election precisely for those reasons, that what we are seeing, with good fortune, I believe we will see a reversal of the so-called Reagan Revolution, in which the ideology of unbridled free markets and in which government was seen as the problem and regulation was seen as a negative. I think that it took a long time for the real danger of that extreme worldview to come home to roost, and it came home to roost in the subprime crisis and subsequently in the credit crunch that followed. So I think people are beginning to realize that yes, indeed, there is a role for government. It won't be the same role, perhaps, that was the role of government in the 1940s and the 1960s. I think the challenge for the Democrats, if we win, will be to define an appropriate role for government where it is regulating where it should, where it is focusing on what we would call public goods that the private sector cannot provide appropriately, focusing on externalities and focusing on externalities, in this case being situations where the market does not actually price in the particular factor in the particular characteristic of the good or service. But also, I think there are some ways in which government mobilization of capital, especially in areas like alternative energy, renewable resources, will be, I think, directed appropriately under a Democratic administration that can embrace the positive and potentially transformational role of government and reject the ideology that government is always the problem. That's domestically. Internationally, of course, there's been a tendency not simply to make strategic and tactical blunders, such as the invasion of Iraq. There's also been a more global lack of comfort with multilateral solutions and multilateral engagement. And even though multilateral institutions have historically served the United States very well, of course they're multilateral and they do not always articulate our interest at the expense, to the preference of others. So many people in the Republican Party seem to look at them with distrust, rather than as venues in which we should operate collaboratively and with a great deal of engagement with our allies. It's harder work to negotiate a solution, but when you negotiate a solution, it's often much longer lasting and much more firm than a unilateral solution that's imposed just by force or by dominance.
And my final question for you is, a lot of people talk about the country becoming divided if either Barack Obama or John McCain wins. Do you see that as being a realistic possibility, or just the media trying to hype up an already electrified election?
I think the media always likes to have a good fight. They like to have a story that has conflict in it because it's, bad news sells newspapers. Good news is just sort of perceived as being a little less interesting. Now, I don't know, at my age, I'm sort of happy to have a little less interesting rather than something that's a little more exciting. But I don't really see. In some ways, I think that we're seeing the end of a very divided country. The last several elections have been decided by hundreds or thousands of votes, tens of thousands of votes. It's been a very evenly divided country. The Electoral College, of course, magnifies some of those margins into looking larger. I think when you wake up on the day after Election Day, you will see a much more united America, united behind Barack Obama and both the vision of change that he's offered, but also the vision of coming together, of people-powered, grassroots engagement. I mean, Barack Obama has not been divisive in this election. He's been extremely he's been bent over backwards in some ways, not to try to exacerbate differences between Americans. So I anticipate that he will continue that tone as president, and will go a long way, I think, to uniting the country again.
Paul, thank you for your thoughts.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for coming out and helping us, and I very much appreciate